Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Geek Addicts, the pop culture podcast where we meet up every week and shoot the shit for an hour. Yeah. One of these days, I'll think of an intro.
That's all right. I struggle with the ones that I do sometimes. Like,
Well, you think it'd be funny because, GNC, the intro is literally just me going, "So how you been?" And then 3DO, I've got this whole routine that I do, and I still manage to fuck up every now and then, which is pretty
yeah,
fun.
I gotcha.
I should just throw it to Thrak one day, and just be like, "Thrak, you do the intro."
He'd probably kill it too.
He probably would. He's much better at speaking than I am. So,
Yeah, that's pretty funny.
uh,
Oh man. So yeah, it's been a week.
yeah, it has. This entire week, every day felt like Friday, and that's not a good thing.
No, for sure. And it was almost worse for me because I had to take Wednesday off because my wife had accidentally double booked appointments, so I had to take the day off so I could take my daughter to her early intervention like group thing.
Mhm.
It's for so she can interact with other kids, get, it helps with the development and everything. And it was just so bizarre having that one day off in the middle of the week. It just really threw off everything for the whole week and just made it feel so weird.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Like Wednesday felt like Sunday to me, and that just felt wrong.
Yeah, yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah. But
This was like one of those weeks where I was just so ready for it to be over. Like I straight up went and bought like a full thing of gin because I need it
uh,
this week.
there you
So
go. I don't know exactly what I'm gonna be getting. I know I'm gonna be getting something tomorrow because my daughter is going over my mom's house for the night tomorrow night. So I'm actually gonna have some free time to hang out. I think my cousin's coming over to hang out. It's been the first time
nice.
in a while, so that's cool. Um, yeah, I haven't had too much time to play Persona this week. I got another like 4 or 5 hours in, give or take.
That's cool.
Um,
It's the thing about Persona 4 is you're gonna realize once you get really close to endgame, you're gonna realize you probably missed a whole bunch of stuff, and then that's when the wonderful new game plus comes in.
yeah, well,
Where
that's well, okay.
it's basically you get to restart the game, but you get to keep all your personas, all your money, all your attributes, like basically everything you learned except for your social links, and you get to do it again, but now not have to worry about all the timing and shit.
Yeah, well, I think I might have fucked up a little bit. Well, not like fucked up, but I think I jumped the gun a little bit. I think I saved Yukiko way too early because now this is this huge stream of days where there's nothing happening. So I've just been grinding and
Oh no, that's
um,
that's what's supposed to happen.
oh, because it said like then he's like after like a bunch of rain or whatever, like that's when like the fog will lift and that's like your time limit. And I had like a whole week before, like when I saved Yukiko, looking at the weather forecast, there wasn't like any rain in the forecast, so it's like I did it super early.
That no, that's you can do that. That's fine. Because all that time you have after, while you're waiting for Yukiko to recover, that's basically the time you would have had beforehand. So
Mhm.
so you didn't
Yeah,
really lose
I
anything.
true, but now it's like I'm just at like a weird point where I don't know what to do. I just been kind of like experimenting a little bit with like the Persona Fusion and stuff like that, and just doing a bunch of grinding and
The persona fusions are
stuff like that.
definite stuff you want to work on. You also want to definitely go around and so you unlocked the fortune box at the shrine yet?
No, I haven't. Is that because I know there was a thing where like you needed courage to go there at night or something. I don't know how to get
Yeah.
courage.
So you get I forget it. So fun fact, I all my replaythroughs of this game are using New Game Plus, so I haven't done fucking stat grinding in forever. Um there's a um there's a guide. I can find it and send it to you. It explains how all that stuff works.
I gotcha.
Um yeah, the fortune box at the shrine is very important, especially for social links, because you can use the fortune box to greatly boost your social links during nights when you have nothing else to do.
Mhm.
It's a strat you'll learn later on.
I'm still kind of getting the hang of just like how like social links and stuff like that works. There's just they kind of just throw a lot at you without like fully explaining what it is and what its purpose is. Like I'm still not
Yeah,
even 100% sure what the social link is for. I just know it's
uh,
important for some reason.
they improve your party member stats, and like you get different you'll unlock different abilities the farther you complete social links. Like every arcana has different attributes. It'll like help you in battle. Like the party members, if like you raise up their social links, they actually unlock new abilities that they can use in the dungeons, which is kind of cool.
Mhm.
Plus, that's where you get all the story.
That's fair. Yeah, I was also wondering like all right, let's say like you do a fusion, like you have your base persona, right? And then you
Mhm.
fuse it with something else. You don't like unfuse, you just fuse from there, correct?
Yes,
Okay. So
but
like say
you can recall previous personas in the compendium to get them back
right.
as long as you've had them once.
Um so like say you do that fusion or whatever and you have your fused persona, right?
Mhm.
And then you get a bunch of those arcana cards that are like, oh, your persona increases strength or you increase luck or whatever at like the
Mhm.
end of a battle with the cards.
Yes,
Now, if you were to fuse the persona that you've been using, do those stat boosts carry over or does it reset?
depends on the fusion because you can look at the stats when you fuse, like because you don't have to accept a fusion when you first like trial it just to see the outcome. You can
Mhm.
look at where the stats line up. Some of them are higher than others. It all depends on the fusion grid and how things work out.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I've just been playing around with it and just, you know, trying out different stuff, seeing what happens. But
You're
I'm
gonna
trying to avoid looking up too many guides just because I want to like experience the game itself as it is. But I mean, obviously, it's a JRPG, so I'm gonna end up looking up guides at some point or another.
I'll give you a little advice. Your first playthrough is going to be very unfulfilling once you finish
Mhm.
it. Like you'll enjoy the experience, but you're going to miss a lot just inherently by the way the game is designed.
That's fair.
Like there is to get the like I'm not going to tell you how to do it because I want you to experience yourself, but there is a specific way to get the true ending and it is very easy to miss.
That's fair. I mean, I'm not too concerned about that aspect of it. Like I said, I especially since it's the first time going through it, I kind of just want to play it organically and just see where everything lies
Mhm.
at the end of it. Kind of like I do with Chrono Trigger. Like with Chrono Trigger, I barely looked up guides at all, just because I wanted to have the experience of it on my own. And in that game in particular, you didn't really need guides very much until you get to like the end where all the side quests are.
Yeah.
Um, but no, I mean, altogether, I've been enjoying my time with it. Sometimes I kind of just want to do something more casual, so I've been playing Portal, like when I just want to play something casual.
Oh, you I love Portal. Speedy thing goes in, speedy thing comes out.
Yeah, it's fun, and it's like because I just started playing the first one, and it's so easy to just jump in and like there's no like real setup. There's no like all these complicated cutscenes and tutorials and stuff. It's just you throws you in. It says here's a gun that shoots portal thingies. And here's a room. Get out of the room.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the whole thing, and it's pretty fun. I've always enjoyed Portal.
The cake was a
Um,
lie.
yes, this is true. But yeah, aside from that, I've since I finished Phase 3 of the MCU, taking a little bit of break from that, jump back into One Piece. So I'm working on One Piece. I'm a whole Cake Island now,
Oh, fun.
which is it's a pretty long arc, but like compared to the next arc, it's pretty short. Like I
Yeah.
don't know if this is actually true or not, but I'm fairly certain that Wano is the longest arc in anime history.
I'm sure Alex could tell you.
It's like 300 episodes long for the one arc.
Yes,
It's wild.
That sounds like One Piece. That sounds like One
That's
Piece.
longer than the entirety of Dragon Ball Z.
Yes,
One
and
arc.
Inuyasha, and Inuyasha, and Dragon Ball
Yep.
Super,
Yeah. It's more
and
than
a lot.
double the length of Dragon Ball Super.
Yeah,
It's wild. It's just insane to me. When you look at it that way, it's like, yeah, I guess I kind of see why they're doing a remake already, or like a Kai version of One Piece.
if they are, we still don't really know what the One Piece is going to be.
Well, we know it's going to be animated by Wit, which is automatically a plus.
Hmm.
So, I mean, it should turn out all right if it actually
It's
happens.
it's still insane to me though that One Piece is not the longest anime.
No, I think
I'm pretty sure
was it like
Detective Conan
Detective Conan?
is longer.
Yeah,
Also,
there's that one.
there's that weird like daytime like sitcom one that airs in Japan. That's like all mini episodes.
I don't know if that counts. I mean, yeah, it technically yes, it counts, but
Because there's over
that's
like
not like
there's over 10,000 episodes of that, I believe.
yeah. Um, I mean, you can make that argument for something like The Daily Show, where one of those kinds of like you could say the news is the longest running show ever, but um,
I, I mean that's a sitcom, anyways. But
yeah, no shit. I mean, I'm not 100% sure how many episodes there are, but I know Pokemon is not far off from One Piece. If you
Pokemon's one of
take all
those.
the shows together, at least.
Yeah, Pokemon's confusing like that because they're technically multiple shows.
True. But a lot of animes do that, so it's kind of like, whatever.
Yeah,
Um,
this is why I haven't started One Piece. Sorry, Alex.
well, that's why I read it first because it was just easier for me with like time constraints and stuff like that. And it made it a lot easier that my cousin already had all the 3-in-1s that were available.
Mm.
And I actually started reading it around the time when we were working at Richards together. It took me a while to get all the way through it. I think, ironically enough, I think I caught up to the manga at the same point in the story where the dub currently is in the anime.
Mm.
So, but
Nice.
yeah, it was definitely a lot easier to get into it reading it rather than watching it. And then once it was like, all right, I already know the story. Now I could just kind of casually watch the anime, and I'm not gonna have to worry about. I know where the story is going, so it's not like I don't know. Even though it is kind of bloated, it doesn't feel as bloated. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, you could be like Alex and watch it like 100 times a month.
Yeah, I'm not gonna do
I
that.
don't know how she does it. She just does.
Well, it's probably just having it on in the background. It's probably just like constantly running on the TV,
It's running in her head, that's for sure.
whether she's in the room or not.
Yeah, knowing her, I wouldn't doubt it.
Hmm.
Oh
So
boy.
we should probably move on to the topic at hand.
Yeah, well, we already kind of mentioned it a little bit. We are actually going to be talking about Chrono Trigger.
Hmm.
Arguably, in a lot of people's opinion, the greatest RPG on the Super Nintendo. Um, it's debatable, I'd say, but it's definitely top five.
Well, I'd say I haven't experienced enough um, Super Nintendo games in general to really have a solid opinion on where it stands in the rankings, so to speak. I will say, out of the JRPGs I have played, is definitely one of the more engaging ones. One of the ones I have enjoyed my time with the most, for
Hmm.
sure. And as anyone who's listened to the show up to this point knows, I just recently finished playing it for the first time, um,
Hmm.
and it was surprisingly engaging for how old it is.
So, Chrono Trigger is very interesting in a lot of ways. Like, So this was Squaresoft, nowadays Square Enix, as everyone knows. And they were Squaresoft was just beginning to reach their pinnacle of like success, particularly like so Chrono Trigger came out in 1995. So this was a very late um Super Nintendo game. Yeah, it came out in Japan March 11th, 1995, and it came out in North America August 11th, 1995. So hey, it's a game that I'm older than for once. That's something, I guess. Um, yeah, so it was like the tail end of 95. This game is very interesting in the sense that so Square was at this time pretty well known. They were very obviously Final Fantasy was huge. They also had like the Saga series and the Mana series going on at the same time, which were starting to gain a bit of a following as well. But in Japan, they were still getting their ass kicked by Dragon Quest, like left and right. Because in Japan, Dragon Quest is just massive. Like, it doesn't matter what system, what game, they will buy it, and it will be one of the best selling games on that system in Japan.
Rightly
So,
so.
one of the things about Dragon Quest that's very iconic is it was always the trio of Yuji Horii as the main writer and director, artist Akira Toriyama, and composer Koichi Sugiyama. For Chrono Trigger, they had actually farmed out and got Yuji Horii in on the this team to work on the writing for the game, and Akira Toriyama as the main artist for this game. Which you look at you look at that artwork and you can tell right away that is very much Toriyama's style.
Oh, for sure.
What's interesting too was like a lot of people forget Enix was the publisher of Dragon Quest, but the franchise is kind of a weird the creators were all independent. Like they weren't employees of Enix, so they were able to kind of do whatever they wanted. So this was way before Square and Enix merged. So it was very interesting that like a bunch of like people famous for an Enix game would jump over to their direct competitor Square and make a completely new game. And a lot of the Final Fantasy team was involved as well, like Hironobu Sakaguchi, the creator of Final Fantasy. He was the lead designer of this game. And uh, Yoshinori Kitase, who was the director behind Final Fantasy 6, 7, and 8, was the director of Chrono Trigger. So it's got quite an interesting pedigree behind it. To me, though, the biggest new addition for this game in terms of like people working on it was Yoshinori Mitsuda, who was the main composer for most of the game. Um, he actually worked himself so hard that he actually got sick, and he couldn't finish the soundtrack, so they brought in Nobuo Uematsu to finish up the last few tracks. And Nobuo Uematsu is a legend in his own right, like the composer from all the Final Fantasies up to the sole composer of all the Final Fantasies up till 9, and like one of the major composers in as well. Like this game was safe to say was stacked from the beginning.
Oh, for sure.
And I also like a little personal story. This was the first $100 game triple digit game I bought in my collecting journey.
Oh, wow.
Like I still
You had
got
the
that.
Super Nintendo version too.
Oh yeah, this is a rare item these days. Yeah, this was like one of the first real like in my early days of collecting. This was the first time I spent $100 on a single game, which is hilarious because nowadays like this game is upwards to I want to say it's almost $300 now. Like
Wow.
it is a very expensive title. Just the loose cartridge, like alone, like so 225 is around what it's going for now. So it's almost doubled for what I paid for it.
Yeah, I can't say I'm surprised. I mean, games like that tend to really hold value.
Yeah, and the sad part about Chrono Trigger is it's only been officially re-released twice physically. It's digitally on like Steam right now, and I think you can still get it on the PlayStation Store. But
I think um I think only on Vita. I don't know if you can get it on any of the
well,
consoles.
you could get it on PS3 as well
Oh,
because
okay.
the
I haven't played a PS3 in God knows how long.
yeah. um, so the game, aside from the digital releases that you can get, but as a collector, it's physical all the way. The game's only been released 3 times as of right now. There's obviously the Super Nintendo original. It was released in a double pack on PlayStation as part of the Final Fantasy Chronicles collection, along with Final Fantasy IV. This is actually, I believe, the version you played.
Yeah, it was the PS1 version.
So, aside from the load times, it's a pretty decent port, um, and adds a bunch of cutscenes and added material. And if you want the best of both worlds, you can get the DS version, which this is considered the definitive way to play it because it includes all the bonus stuff from the PlayStation version, along with some added like content to tie it into its sequel, Chrono Cross, and the same Super Nintendo, basically all the same Super Nintendo game that everyone knows and loves. Unfortunately, this is also a very expensive game nowadays.
Yeah, I've looked into it. It's definitely out of my price range.
Yeah, unfortunately, for if you want to play Chrono Trigger and you want to physically own it, you're gonna be paying a lot, or you're gonna just have to deal with the PlayStation version.
What I've been seeing is for the DS version, the lowest I've seen for just the loose cartridge is like $85.
Ugh. Yeah.
And that's like the absolute lowest I've seen. I saw a lot higher.
The saddest thing is too. So the complete in box used copy is averaging around 110 right now.
Mhm,
Depend. That's at like a perfect price because I mean people are gonna oversell, obviously.
mhm.
Um, yeah, it's an unfortunately just an expensive game all around.
Well, I think that if they re-released it again, I'm sure like it wouldn't be as coveted. I think it's the fact that it hasn't been released as often as other games like Final Fantasy VII.
Kinda. It also has a bit of a mystique behind it. It's like Earthbound, where people adore this game. Like it is one of like the holy grails of RPGs to a lot of people. Rightfully
Mhm.
so, because it is a phenomenal game. But it kind of has this sort of mystique behind it that has just made it like eternally expensive, no matter how many times it's re-released.
Yeah.
And it's just it's one of those games that like it's really hard to explain why it's so great. You really have to play it to truly understand.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. Because it's one of those things where I've heard of this game for a long time. It's one that you know, it's always been brought up in conversation when it comes to video games and RPGs specifically. Um, and while I always acknowledged its place as far as like how critically acclaimed it is, it didn't really dawn on me until I actually started playing it myself.
Yeah. Yeah, like the game has such a way of like portraying its story. And it also did a lot of things with RPGs that was kind of unique at the time. Like it's a great example of time travel handled well in a story
Mhm.
because time travel is extremely easy to screw up. And it's one of those things that like a lot of people won't even bother with because it's such a hard thing to get right. Chrono
Mhm.
Trigger does does it fairly well. Like I won't say it's a perfect story because no, there really isn't a perfect story in my opinion, but it is one of the better RPG storylines I can think of in a long time.
Yeah, for sure. It was definitely one that I didn't have any problem keeping up with, and especially with JRPGs, that's a bold statement because
Yeah.
they can be pretty damn complicated sometimes.
We should probably put up a spoiler warning here. I know it's an old game, but I've seen the discussion going around like spoiler. Some people are very particular about spoilers, so I'm gonna just put the warning here for anybody going forward. We're not really gonna
Well,
go super
hmm,
deep into the plot, just because it's honestly a game that you should play to experience, because it is very it's a very unique experience, and it kind of gets ruined if you know exactly what's going to happen.
yeah, I mean, I didn't intend to do like a beat by beat breakdown or anything. Like, um, yeah,
Honestly,
it's
I thought this episode would be more interesting just because it was your first time playing it, and getting a fresh experience, like take on it, is just fascinating in a lot of ways.
yeah, and yeah, I guess putting the spoiler warning in the beginning is a good idea because there is a new gamer born every day. So
Yeah,
you know, while yes, it is an older game, and by this point, it's been very well established. There's always new gamers who like to go back and check out older stuff. There's people like me who just missed it over the years and just finally got to it. So yeah, it's probably a good idea.
it's also a very hard to easily obtain game, which makes it even more a lot. It definitely it makes a lot less people. It means a lot less people have experienced it.
Yeah, well, it definitely made like I'm definitely a lot happier now knowing that I had a Vita in the first place to be able to get
Yeah,
it. And I gotta say, like every time I played a game on my Vita, like I don't know why, but just playing the Vita just makes it more of a pleasurable experience. I don't know
the,
why.
the Vita. We'll have to do a Vita episode at some point, but the Vita is just a comfortable, relaxing handheld. Like that screen is beautiful. It's got the perfect form factor. It's not heavy at all. It's just a fun system to play games on, especially RPGs.
And it's got a fucking killer battery life too.
It does. I mean, especially for how much output is. Well, I mean, you have the later version, right?
I honestly could not tell you.
So the original versions with the incredibly pretty OLED screen have worse battery life, just because that screen is a fucking power sink.
Mhm.
Um, the later ones have a slightly less pretty screen, but they have much better battery life because of it.
I
Um,
gotcha.
but even then, the battery life on the regular one is perfectly fine. And let's be real, I'm not really taking my Vita out in public ever. So
Mhm.
the Vita gets played mostly in my living room on a Sunday
That's
when I'm
fair.
kicking back with a coffee and not planning to do anything.
That's fair. Um, yeah, it's I don't know. The Vita is just one of those kinds of consoles where like I wish I had gotten more into it when it was still like an active console because
Could
now
have
it's
been
just
like
kind of
me.
like
Could have been
yeah.
like
Well,
me
now
being
it's
one of. Go on.
go ahead.
I was just gonna say you
Yeah.
could have been like me being one of like the four like extreme Vita supporters out there.
Hmm. Um, because I mean, there was a lot of good games, a lot of classic games on there too, and like I mean, even like you used to say it was your Final Fantasy machine because it literally has like what the first 10 Final Fantasies on there.
You can play a version of Final Fantasy 1 through 10 on that system. Yes.
Yeah, which yeah, there's that, and then obviously there's Chrono Trigger. There's they have a bunch of like the classic PlayStation Disney games. Like they have like the Buzz Lightyear game on there, A Bug's Life,
You can play a
bunch of other
version of
ones.
Persona 1 through 4 on there.
Yeah. Actually, the reason I got my Vita in the first place was to play a Sword Art Online game,
Yep.
but which I played a few of, uh, and I enjoyed my time with, but there's only one of them in particular that I would seriously recommend out of the ones I played. But that's a story for another day. Um,
So I guess to start, just kind of shift to Chrono Trigger, and I guess like just to ask a few questions, I have to know, what did you think of like the graphics, like transitioning Toriyama's art into like sprite form?
it worked really well. It honestly reminded me a lot of like Legacy of Goku, like the sprite
Mm.
work and stuff. It was very similar to that. Obviously, a little bit less detailed,
less detailed, but
with like the
more.
backgrounds and stuff. But I mean, the sprites held up surprisingly well.
It's got a very distinct style that Super Nintendo games have, and Chrono Trigger to me, it's up there with. So I always say like the pinnacle of like SNES RPG graphics wise to me was always Chrono Trigger, Final Fantasy VI, Dragon Quest VI, and for a non Super Nintendo game of Fantasy Star 4 on the Genesis. Those were like to me like the peak of that Super Nintendo graphical style for
Mhm.
RPGs. And I mean, there were other games like Tales of Fantasia and Star Ocean, but we didn't get those over here initially.
Yeah.
Um, just the way Super Nintendo, like 16-bit RPGs style themselves, I think holds up very well, especially in a case like Chrono Trigger, where like that Toriyama art style is super unique. And the character party members in this game in particular are also incredibly like they all have a look to them and they're very memorable because of it.
Oh, for sure. I mean, that's just kind of part and parcel to Toriyama's art style in general. It's they're all very standout designs.
Hmm.
Like you could look at any one of them and instantly know who it is. Like there's a lot of games and games and shows and stuff where I have trouble following who's who, like because I'm bad with names and stuff. I never had that problem with this game.
Nah, because like obviously Chrono is the typical silent protagonist, but
Mhm.
he is a surprisingly complex silent protagonist. Like he goes through a lot in this game.
Yeah, no kidding.
Um, you also got, of course, the main heroine. How do you pronounce her name? Because I know a bunch of people pronounce it differently.
Which one?
Uh,
The princess?
yeah,
I pronounced it Marl.
that's yeah.
I've heard other people say Marley.
Marley's another one. I always said Marl because that's just how other people have said. She is a fun character as well. Um, what are some of the other characters you really liked? Like I like Luca in particular.
Luca's cool. I was a big fan of Ayla. I liked Ayla a lot.
Ayla's fun. Frog is an
Frog, of
interesting
course.
character.
Frog. I feel like Frog just got so much story and development throughout the whole thing.
Hmm.
Frog was a really fun character.
We also got Rick Astley,
Yeah.
but that joke will never be not funny.
You know
Um,
what's funny is like when I had that realization for Robo's theme, like I I was honestly wondering, like, was this like Kenji Yamamoto's first job or something? Because
no, so Mitsuda is like one of the greatest composers in like RPG history. Just the fact that he somehow made Never Gonna Give You Up as a freaking song in this completely by accident, I'm convinced, because there's just no way that was intentional. Like it's so bizarre. I think it just is one of those things where it's like this is too hilarious of a coincidence. Um
entirely possible.
yeah. I will say though, the first time you hear it, your brain kind of stops for a minute and you're just like, there's no way that's it's you're like, and then you're like, it is. We're being rickrolled in Chrono Trigger.
Yeah, Chrono Trigger invented the Rickroll.
I mean, it's an awesome theme.
Oh, for sure.
Speaking of that, the
That was
music in this game entirely in general is just fucking amazing.
for sure. This was like one of the first games, and since I was a kid, that I've really like plugged in headphones and listened to the music while I was playing. Like, I I I didn't do that for the longest time. Like, I remember doing it with like years music with like my Game Boy and stuff. But aside from that, I never really did that. I always had other stuff going. I'd be listening to a podcast, or I'd have like a TV show in the background or something. But this is the first time I've actually taken the time to really sit and listen to the music of the game, and it was very enjoyable throughout.
Yeah, like it's one of those soundtracks that I will actually listen to just like on its own. Like I'll put on, say I'll boot it up on like my iPod or something. I'll just play it like while I'm like working around the house or like if I'm going for a long drive or something. Because
Mhm.
it is a diverse soundtrack. There's a ton of different styles, and that Super Nintendo music, especially the RPGs, just has like such a fun sound to it that just it sticks in your head like eternally.
And you know what's funny is the song that plays during that opening cutscene. Like, I don't know what, even if you cut out all the Dragon Ball ass sound effects and stuff that happen throughout it, it still has a very Dragon Ball sound to it.
Oh yeah,
Like the song itself. Like between that, the sound effects, the very like GT style animation, like it felt like I was watching like a Dragon Ball OVA.
hmm. No, that's for sure. Honestly, like to me, like one of my favorite things is you listen to the soundtrack and you can pick out if you're like if you're a big video game music guy like me, you can pick out which songs were the ones Uematsu did as opposed to Masuda, just because they have such a different style to them.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm not as good as picking out music stuff. Like I'm one of the more like, it's like, oh, this song is good, and then I just move on.
You'll probably notice more once you get like because Final Fantasies you're only on 3, right?
I haven't started 3 yet, but I played 1, 2, 7, 8, 7 remake, and Crisis Core.
Okay,
That's the extent of my Final Fantasy.
so you haven't played the Super Nintendo games yet. Um,
No, not yet.
you'll notice when you play those that the style of those soundtracks is just unreal. Like I to this day I still don't know how Uematsu got the sound out of the Super Nintendo that he did.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, so soundtracks great, graphics are great. What did you think of the battle system? Because the battle system in particular is very interesting because it's kind of a hybrid of a bunch of different styles, particularly the iconic Final Fantasy active time battle system that was used from 4 to 9.
Mhm. Yeah, I that was one of the first things that really struck me going through it. Like especially with like the not random encounters kind of. Like I mean they're all like yeah, there are, unavoidable fights, but they're not like random. It's not like you're walking across a screen and you hit a patch of grass and every step you take you're fighting someone. It's like no, like yeah, if there's one that's unavoidable, like it's gonna be there, but like you're not gonna have another fight right afterwards. That one's not gonna come back until you leave the screen and come back.
Yeah,
Um,
it's not random in the sense that they just happen infinitely when you're in an enemy spawn zone. They're not quite to the level of like true on-screen enemies where like you can't dodge all of them, like you can't strategically get around. There's a lot of cases where like you'll enter like there'll be enemies on screen and you'll kind of just enter their combat zone and then the
mhm.
fight will happen even though you're nowhere near them. But there are
But I
some
kind of
later. Oh, go
okay.
on.
Sorry.
Well, I was just gonna say there are some later on that you can kind of dodge around if your timings are good.
Yeah, but I think that's kind of a good thing though because like with those kinds of scripted fights, like not scripted, but like the unavoidable fights and stuff like that. Between that and the fact that, to my knowledge, there wasn't a way to flee battles,
I
or
think you
maybe I just
can.
missed it.
It's in the
Um,
menu somewhere, I believe.
but I found that I didn't really need to grind at all because of that.
Mm. Yeah,
Without
it's
having the random nature of the encounters and the fights and stuff, like if you're going through the story and doing the side quests and stuff like that, you never really need to grind.
yeah, it's not a super hard game, which is a good thing about it because it's supposed to be a replayable game.
Mhm,
Um, but it's challenging enough that it's not like Final Fantasy Mystic Quest levels of easy.
mhm.
Um,
Um, One thing I definitely liked a lot was the like the combo moves and stuff like that. Like I found that really enjoyable with like the different like team attacks and stuff like that. Like that was really cool.
Oh, I just remember you flee from battle the same way you do in old Final Fantasies where you hold down Eleanor.
Oh, yeah, see, didn't even know that was a thing. I just thought you couldn't flee.
No, no, I just remember that. Yeah, it's like the old Final Fantasies. You have to hold down Eleanor and you can you run away.
Oh, okay. Fair enough. Well, I didn't need it anyway, so it's fine. I think I only wiped like twice. And
Yeah, there's
generally I saved often enough, so it wasn't a big deal.
so a bit of a spoiler here. Were you expecting the fake out with the quote unquote villain of the game to not end up being the villain?
Um, I'm not really sure, honestly. I I definitely got the sense that he wasn't a good guy either way. But I mean, the way that they showed him in the opening cutscene made me kind of feel like he was a playable character, even though I didn't know
Yeah.
that at the time.
Did you recruit
So,
Magus?
uh, I tried to kill him first, and then when I realized that it was just Frog and no other team members, um, I gave it the old college try, and then I lost, and then I said, "Fuck that, he can just join up."
Yeah.
I'm not gonna
Yeah.
grind just to kill him. I'll just do it on New Game Plus.
I don't think Chrono Trigger was the first game to do this, but I did like the idea of the whole like your quote unquote main villain ends up becoming a party member.
I did like the twist of like because when you're starting the game and you're going through the early quests and stuff, meeting your party members and such, um, it lays the story out as if Magus had created Lavos and that he was like the guy who caused it all. And then when you find out later on that no, not only did he not create Lavos, not only was Lavos there for millions of years, he also wasn't summoning Lavos specifically like to rule. He summoned him because he wanted to kill that thing.
Yeah. The giant space flea from nowhere, or whatever the fuck
Yeah,
Lavos is supposed to be.
yeah. I couldn't even tell you.
Did you
Some
for
weird turtle porcupine thing. I don't know.
yeah. Did you for shits and giggles fight Lavos the first chance you got?
No, I did not. I I knew I wasn't ready. As soon as they introduced the whole concept of the bucket, I was like, yeah, that's a new game plus thing. I'm not even fucking with that. Because
So
I knew New Game Plus was a thing like from the go. So I was like, yeah, there's definitely some things they don't expect you to do the first time around.
so my first playthrough, I made a extra save file and I was like, let's see what happens, and I got fucking annihilated. I was like, yep, that's what I thought.
Yeah, because you're like level 20 or so when you first get to
Yeah.
part of the game. And I think based on a guide that I read, like you want to be like at least level 40 if you even want to have a ghost of a chance.
I'm sure it's possible. I swear I've seen videos of people doing it, but holy fuck, that is. I love when games do shit like that where they're like, yeah, you can face the final boss right now, but you shouldn't.
Yeah. Well, I do like that they left the option open. And I'm definitely interested to see what kind of endings I get from doing different things like that. And the fact that this game has multiple endings alone, like back in the Super Nintendo era, that it has what 12, 13 different endings, something like that. Like
Yeah,
that's just wild to me.
it was a different time. At the time, that was kind of unique. Like nowadays, that's just a thing that a lot of games do.
Hmm.
Um, I really liked it though. I thought it was a fun, like it definitely encouraged replayability, especially with New Game Plus.
For sure. And that's one of those
And
games that I might like just casually jump into a new game plus just to test some of that stuff out, you know.
I mean, that's what I do with Persona 4 all the time.
Hmm.
um, yeah, it's such a cool idea, and I this game is just really fun to play. Like the battle system is super fun. All the different like combat things you can get away with. This game just has such a fun presentation. Like everything about it, like really just like reaches out to you, and it just keeps you interested. Great music, great sound, great art direction. Like that, the opening, like when you start the game up, I don't know if it's the same. I assume it's the same on the PlayStation version, but like when you start up the Super Nintendo version and you just hear the ticking clock, like
Mhm.
that is such a cool way to start up a game.
Yeah, for sure. Um, so I'm just having trouble. What kind of party do you usually run with that, or do you like to try different ones every time?
Chrono Trigger is one of those games I try something different all the time. Like sometimes I'll have like the original trio of like Chrono, Luca, and Marl. Sometimes I'll throw Frog in. I have Frog in my party a lot.
Yeah,
Um,
well, I mean, I think just based on the way the story goes, you kind of have to.
yeah.
Because the beginning of the game leans real heavy into his story, and then the when you get to the point in the game where Chrono's dead, he kind of becomes the leader of the party.
Oh yeah,
So
Chrono quote unquote dies at one point. Yeah, that
yeah,
happens. I think
which
that's one of those spoilers that everybody knows at this point though, because it's just fucking everywhere now.
see, I fucked up. I didn't have it spoiled until I spoiled it for myself because I was
Oh,
looking at just offhand. I was like, "Oh, this game has multiple endings. I'm gonna look and see how to trigger the different endings." And what, like, literally, the first thing I saw when I looked it up was, "Well, if you beat the game while Chrono is dead," I'm like, "Fuck, god damn
yeah. See,
it."
that one's up there with like Aerith dying in 7, where it's
that
just
one I
like
did. That one I did know about.
everybody knows Aerith dies at this point. That's why I'm convinced they're gonna subvert it in fucking the remake. But
Well, apparently they did that already with Zack. So
yeah, I still haven't played enough of those yet. I don't know, that
mhm,
remake just something about it just doesn't do it for me. But that's for another podcast.
that's fair. Yeah, we could definitely do a whole separate one on just the FF7 remake.
Hmm. Yeah, one of these days I'll actually finish it.
No, you never finished it.
I finished the first part. I Rebirth just I don't know. I'm not
I
feeling it
don't
right
know.
now.
I haven't gotten any. I might ask for it for my birthday or something. But I'm excited to jump into it. Like I said, I don't have any like nostalgic tie to Final Fantasy VII, so I like the idea of an alternate version of the story. Much like Chrono Trigger, where time travel is a big deal, and depending on how you play it, different things can happen.
True. Yeah, I guess I don't know. I have a weird, complicated relationship with the 7 remake, but
Plus, I
uh,
listened to the I know kind of going a little off topic, but I listened to the was it Tales from the Backlog? Where they did an episode on Final Fantasy VII Remake, and they had I forget who it was who said it, but one of them had this whole theory about how the whispers are like, or that's what they're called, right? The little ghosty things,
I think so. Maybe.
or whatever the ghosty things. Like they had like, this theory that like they represent like they're trying to keep the characters on the main story from the original game, and when they like at the end of the game they kill like all the different ghosty guys, and that kind of like breaks the game to the point where like everything is up for debate, like anything can happen from that point on. It doesn't have to follow the trajectory anymore. And I
Yeah,
like that theory. That's a really cool theory behind it.
mm, I mean, it's an alternate universe. Like, it's not supposed to be the original 7 universe, so like that's fine. I'm a stubborn old man when it comes to stuff like this. So,
That's fair. um
um, so I have to ask, like, what was your thought of like the first like time travel, like kind of like experience in this game, like where like Marl gets kind of erased from time, and you have to figure out a way to undo that.
Um, I didn't expect it to happen so early because they there's a little like part in the opening cutscene that shows that bit.
Hmm.
So I knew that that was going to be a factor going in.
The way they do it though in the actual story is really shocking because it just straight up happens.
Yeah, you're just like talking to her in the castle, and all of a sudden she just starts screaming and vanishes. It's like, oh crap! Well, something happened.
Well, because
And
you had
I
sent her ancestor off to get basically killed. And
Yeah, because Marl appeared in that timeline and she looks exactly like her ancestor who had been kidnapped at the exact same time.
they
Like the
don't go to
people from
rescue
that
her.
time didn't think that she was still kidnapped, so they didn't rescue her, and you know,
She ends up erasing herself from the timeline. And it's a
she Back to
very
the Futures herself.
basically it's a very effective way of explaining the problems with time travel and why it is a very tricky thing to write.
Mhm.
Which more power to the writing team on this game because they did it fairly well. It's not perfect. Like there's a few moments every now and then where you're kind of like, I'm sure that's not going to fuck up the timeline at some point.
Mhm. But I love well, one of the things I love about this game is how depending on the year that you're in, the setting changes drastically.
Oh yeah,
Like it's the same map no matter like what year you're in. Obviously like changes happen over time, but um it's so wide, like going from the year what was 65 million BC to the year 600 AD to the year 2300. Like it's vastly different in every time period, and that's just so interesting to me. It's such an interesting
mm,
way to have multiple maps and storylines to explore, but it's the same place.
they put so much effort and thought into this game, like direction wise, like just story, like how the world works. It is really novel and it's not something that a lot of games would do nowadays. Like a lot of games just don't put this much effort into their world and the game they're creating.
Yeah, that's honestly that's why it blows my mind that there hasn't been like an anime or a made out of this because it's there. I lost you for a second there.
It's all right. I got what you're saying though. Like it, it's got to be a licensing thing,
Oh,
or they just don't feel like
oh, there
they
you are.
could get. Uh, it must be a licensing thing because I just don't think either that or they just don't have enough material to like really make a full thing. Um,
Oh, I personally don't agree with that. There's so much there. I mean, even if you're just taking it like a time period at a time, like there's so much material. It's only like a 20 something hour game, but there's so much material to work with, and they could easily embellish it and do more stuff with it. You know, um, I don't know. It just blows my mind, but especially with the kind of following, the kind of fan base it has. Like it just blows my mind that they haven't done anything with it.
there is a Chrono Trigger OVA, but I don't know how connected it actually is to the world because it seems to be
Uh,
kind of just a thing that exists.
I've heard of that. I think it's only like a 10-minute short of like before anything even happens. It's like monsters attacking like the festival or something before it's set up. And that's
Yeah,
like the
it's
whole thing. It's like a 10-minute little thing.
for some reason Square just doesn't want to like touch the Chrono universe anymore. Like we got the sequel Chrono Cross, which is basically an entirely different game. Like there it is a aside from the time travel and like some aspects, it is borderline a different series.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's weird. They just like I think that's part of why this game is so like well like revered is like they it hasn't been touched. Like it has that like mystique to it. Like that there isn't like all this added like baggage that brings down like the game, I guess you could say.
Mhm.
Because like that's one of the reasons why, like, say with Final Fantasy VII, they made the whole complication. So I'm sorry, I said the joke name. Uh, compilation of Final Fantasy
Mhm.
VII series, which added all these different things to the point where people made the joke calling it the complication of Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah.
Um, and I feel like Chrono Trigger, they've left it alone, and that's why it has such a strong love that is directed at it, and it hasn't become jaded over the years. Like, it's not an example of hype backlash, which some games like another game from this era, Earthbound, tends to get, where it's so highly regarded that a lot of people jump into it and they just don't get what the big deal is.
Mhm. Yeah, I can see that. I mean, it's also an effect of like the time because there's a lot of like newer gamers, like younger folks, getting into a lot of this stuff who just can't get into older games
Mm.
because I mean, let's be real. What it is they're spoiled because the new games are so shiny. They're so they got all these huge teams working on it. It takes like 10-15 years just to develop. Like,
Kids also just don't want to have to follow a story. They'd rather just go play Fortnite and shoot a bunch of stuff.
yeah, they'd rather jump into an online match where they just shoot a bunch of people or whatever, or they want a big open world single player game where nobody ever completes the story.
Well, where they avoid the story at all costs just to go do their own adventure, like the Skyrim
I don't know.
approach.
Yeah, just go shoot a giant in the ankle with an arrow or something.
Yeah,
Like,
Grand Theft Auto, you just avoid the story at all costs and just drive around.
I mean, that's all I ever did in Grand Theft Auto.
Fair.
um, but I don't know. It's just something about Chrono Trigger just has that like it sucked me in to the point where I didn't want to put it down. I just wanted to keep playing it, which really sucks because when I get into a game like that and I don't have the time to really dump into it. Like it took me like over a month to beat it.
Mm.
When realistically, if I had had the time to really just sit down and binge it, I could have done it within a week.
Yeah, it's not a long game, but I mean, it's not a long game with one playthrough, but it is a game that takes a while to get through, I guess, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Um. So I'm trying to think. So there's 12 different endings. I'm pretty sure I got the primary, like the canon ending. Um I'm trying to think. I can't imagine how drastically the ending changes with each one. I'm guessing you've experienced most, if not all of them.
I've experienced a few of them. It's been a long time since I've played through and gotten different ones, though, so I'm a little rusty when it comes to them.
Mhm.
Um, I know they're not drastically different, but like it's kind of like one of those things where like you get like kind of like a slight, oh, that's different, or like kind of like a nod thing. I know some of them are pretty different. I don't really want to go super into some of them because they are pretty I don't want to spoil it for people who haven't played, but
That's fair.
I know the DS version added two new scenarios to the game entirely.
Okay.
Mostly games, they were mostly added to connect it more to Chrono Cross,
Mhm.
which is fair, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess that makes sense to do that, but I mean, when they're so separated, that's like trying to connect Final Fantasy 7 to Final Fantasy 8. It's like why
Well,
they're not even close to related.
Chrono Cross had elements, anyways, that imply they could have been related.
I don't know. It just seems silly to me personally.
Yeah. Well,
um.
the difference with the Final Fantasies are those are entirely different worlds. The
Mhm.
Chrono the Chrono Trigger Chrono Cross thing was a bit more ambiguous.
That's fair. Um. So out of all the characters that they give us for party members, who do you think is like the most like well developed? I guess.
Probably probably either Frog or Marl had a lot of development too. Probably Frog though.
Yeah, I'd say probably Frog. Honestly, I'd give Luca a shout out though because I didn't have her on my party a bunch, but whenever she was in my party, she always had something going on, because
Mm.
obviously she had a lot of interactions with Robo, obviously, because she's the Tinkerer. Um, there was the whole thing with her mom, which, you only get to see really if you do the side. I think it's the forest side quest where you gotta like turn the desert into the forest.
Yes.
Um, which I got really lucky on because I didn't save beforehand, so I literally just clicked off my Vita and was like, I gotta look this up because I don't want to fuck it
See,
up.
that's the joy of of modern technology,
Yeah,
where you can just turn it off and be like, it'll be there when I get back.
yeah, because I never would have known what to do.
Um,
um, but I definitely feel like Luca gets more development than I feel like the game sets her up for.
mm,
Because like, yeah, there's that one little, and that's not even like the whole goal of the side quest. That just kind of happens during the side quest.
yeah, yeah.
Um, Otherwise, she doesn't really get like her own story like
That
everybody else does. Like Marl's got her whole like connection with all the different like royal families and like so many people that you meet that are apparently her ancestors and descendants.
mm,
Um, and then you have like Frog Story, which is like half the game.
yeah,
Um, Robo gets his own little side quests, but he also kind of had his introduction thing where he was reprogrammed, and then all of his robot buddies went against him, and then he had his weird robot girlfriend thing.
yeah. He did.
Um, and then Ayla kind of had, I mean, before you even, she kind of goes through her arc like as she's gearing up to join the party in the first place. So
Yeah.
it feels like Luca's the odd one out, really, as far as
Unfortunately, I mean, this
okay,
game luckily has a small enough party that like all of the characters can get development. Something that Cross does not follow because holy shit, there's so many party members in that game.
oh yeah,
Um, yeah, Chrono Cross is infamous for like there are so many party members that it's like almost ridiculous.
hmm
I will say though, it's pretty telling when like you look at the cover of the game and the three characters that are presented on the cover
yeah,
kind of makes it clear who the ones that you're going to experience the most of the game with are.
hmm
I will say Chrono, for being a silent protagonist, has a surprising amount of development throughout the game.
yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, he's a silent protagonist, but there are still like dialogue options and stuff, and
Hmm.
like things that you do throughout the game that you wouldn't expect would have an effect on how the game like in the beginning when you're doing the whole festival thing and it's like simple things like you're just walking around playing an RPG, you're just testing things just to see what things do. It's like, oh, I found a sandwich, I'm going to eat the sandwich. You don't think that's going to come back around.
Yeah.
And to be fair, I tried to get that little girl's cat for her, but the cat wouldn't follow me. It wasn't my fault. I don't know why the fuck they wanted to put me to death for that, but
Yeah.
I tried to get her cat for her. um,
It's a funny game like that.
yeah, but like things like that are just so interesting, and the way that they play with the time travel, in ways that you wouldn't expect. But at the same time, like I say, I didn't need to look up guides very often for at least until I got to like the very very end of the game.
Mm,
Um, and that was something I really liked about it is that I didn't need to rely on that as much. Like for instance, when you're doing Frog's thing and you find out, oh, he's the legendary hero that everyone was waiting for, and you get the broken pieces of the Masamune, and you're like, oh, we got to take this to Melchior so he can go fix it. And he says, oh, well, we need this red stone, and this red stone, it's like super super rare. Like it used to be highly available, but like now it's like basically not existent anymore. And then like you don't even have to really think, okay, so I'm gonna go back to 65 million BC and that's where I'm gonna find it. Like I didn't, other games like they wouldn't set you up in a way where you would just know like, oh, okay, this is what I need to do. I need to go back here to get this.
mm.
Um, and that was something I really liked about it. Yeah, it's just I don't know, the way that it's set up just works really well. And things like how I mentioned before, how like the maps are so different and like the people are so different and everything, but ultimately it's the same world. Then you have things like if you you go like to like the present time, and you find this dude who's like a workman or whatever. He's like a carpenter or something, and he's like, "Oh, I'm just sitting here drinking beer. Oh, you want my tools? You can have my tools. That's fine." And then you take those tools and you go back in time to like his ancestor, and he's like, "Oh, cool! I got some tools. Now I'm gonna go fix up that castle over there." And that'll have an effect on how things develop throughout the story.
Mm,
And it's just kind of cool how the time travel affects the way the world unfolds, so to speak.
yeah. No, if we were doing like if we were like a deep dive podcast like Tales of the Backlog or something, we could totally go like super deep into this game and all of its mechanics. But honestly, it's one of those things where I think like you you really should experience it yourself because it is truly an RPG that is like one of a kind in a lot of ways.
Oh, for sure. It was just, I don't know, it's just such an enjoyable experience. Like this is a game that like I get definitely see myself just going back to it like once every year or two. And oh, I'm gonna start another new game plus. I'm gonna go
Mm,
through. I'm gonna get another one of the endings, and then I'm gonna put it down for another year. Um, I could easily see this end up being slotted with Fable 2 and Legacy of Goku 2, like the games that I just go back to once a year, play for a week, put down, and then you know
mm.
it's just very enjoyable experience overall. I'm
It's
definitely very happy that I'm going back to all these older games that I've never played and finding so many things to enjoy about them and
mm.
having an experience that I don't get from modern games.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I'm such a pro retro gamer kind of guy. It's like there is modern gaming, and I'm not gonna lie, kind of sucks right now. Like games
Hmm.
are so slow to come out. They cost so much money, and they're just such blasé experiences as of late.
Hmm.
With a few exceptions here and there, but like the best way to me that sums up how older games are just better a lot of the time is like next week we're getting the Paper Mario Thousand Year Door remake is coming out. Like that is like the most excited I've been for a game in like months, and it's a game from 2004 or 3 or whatever it was.
Hmm.
It's just older games have so much to offer, and a lot of them are getting lost to time, which is really sad. And
Yeah, it's a super bummer.
that's why I like doing shows like this and just kind of talking about these like wonderful games that like not a lot of people experienced back in the day because they are just such wonderful experiences.
Yeah, for sure. It's one of those things where it really upsets me that I don't have as much free time as I'd like to play video games because there's so many other games that I've missed over the years that I'd love to really sink my teeth into, and I just don't have the time.
That's like one of the downsides to like it's one of most tragic ironies of life is like when you're a kid and you have all the time in the world, you don't have the money to play any of these games. I mean, granted, nowadays the kids have emulators and they can probably all play everything, but
True.
different. That's an argument for a different day. But then nowadays we have all the money in the world, well, give or take, and we don't have any time at all to. Let me rephrase that. We have the income to treat ourselves every now and then, but we have no time to actually enjoy what we treat ourselves with. I guess I should
Yeah.
say.
Like even me, who's not a collector, I have more games than I will probably play in my lifetime.
That is the tragic irony of game collecting.
I'm not even a game collector. That's just that's just by chance. That's just how, oh, this game, I want to play this game, Like I got Sandland, I pre-ordered it, and I've only played like 2 hours of it, and I haven't had the time, and when I do have the time, I'm usually playing handheld.
Hmm.
Um, and it's upsetting because there's a lot of games that I'd really like to get into, especially because of this. Like I'd love to do more video game based episodes. Um, But the problem is we have to both have played the game.
Yeah,
And um if I'm being real, like a lot of the games that I played are kind of niche. So
I mean, to be fair, I'm a lot of my games I'm in To be fair, I do have a podcast about one of the most niche consoles of all time. So
True, but I mean that's your platform for that particular show. So I mean, you people know what they're getting. With it. Nobody's gonna go to to the 3DO experience and be like, "Well, how to talk about all these old games?" Like, of course you're talking about old games. It's a 3DO podcast, you know.
true.
But like this isn't a Dragon Ball podcast. I played a
Despite
lot of Dragon Ball. I played a lot of Dragon Ball games. So like a
despite
lot of the
what
games
it
that I
may,
could talk about are those games. So it's like, I don't want to oversaturate it. We've already done a shit ton of them, and I don't want to oversaturate it. But there's so many I'd love to talk about.
I mean, this is like this is like got to be like our like 10th like Toriyama related thing we've done.
It just happens by chance.
Yeah, it really. Well, we did the
I mean,
Toriyama
obviously,
tribute marathon, but that was specifically with reason.
yeah. But then but sheer coincidence, we ended up doing Sandland, Chrono Trigger, friggin' I mean, our pilot was a Dragon Ball episode.
Yeah, yes, it was
I think because this is what our 28th episode.
something like
Uh,
that.
and I'm pretty sure at least 8 of those have been, if not Dragon Ball, at least Toriyama related.
Yeah, it really has. It's been a
So
fun.
it's
I mean,
like
that and our logo is literally a Dragon Ball.
true, true. But I
Yeah,
mean,
this is 28.
but yeah, there's that, and there's like a lot of the games that I played like on PlayStation, PlayStation 2, Xbox, and stuff. Like they're very specific games, like for instance, Straw Humans, Gun. Um, it's been a long ass time since I've played them, but the old Spider-Man games, like the ones based off of the Tobey Maguire movies.
Well, I
Um,
mean, Spider-Man 2 is still a classic.
oh, for sure. I mean, that's the game that like all the modern Spider-Man games are based off of. Let's be real.
Yeah, basically.
Um, but I don't know. I just have such a specific, like throughout my life, I've had such a specific taste in video games and stuff like that, and I just by chance. Um, and I just missed so many of the classics, and I'm trying to catch up with them. It's hard to find the time for it. And then there's also all the new games that are coming out that I want to play, and it just makes it so much more complicated than it needs to be.
Yeah, that's just the unfortunate part of it, sadly.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think this is a good place to cut this one off. I think we gave a good impression of Chrono Trigger. Might revisit Chrono Trigger on a GNC episode at some point, give a more in-depth discussion on it. We'll see about that. I don't know yet.
Yeah.
Depending on if I can get Alex to play it or I have to do a solo episode without her. But
I'm sure there's plenty of people in the community that you could pull for that one.
yeah, that's like a long way down the line though, because I'd have to
True.
replay it.
Yeah, and you wouldn't want to have them so close to you. Want to kind of like with the Spy Family thing. Like you don't want to do them too close together.
True. Yeah. Honestly.
Yeah.
But yeah, guys, once again, thanks for joining us on Geek Addicts. You can find Geek Addicts on all the major podcasting platforms, particularly Apple Podcasts and Spotify. You can also find us on YouTube now with video versions. And you can also find all of our links at Linktree / The Barber Who Games. And you can also join the GNC Podcast Network Discord server to find all things GNC, 3DO Experience, Geek Addicts, talk gaming, anime, or just general nonsense. And with that, everybody, we will see you all later.
Have a good one.